Hi, welcome. For those of you who are not familiar with me and my practice, my name is Megan Warren, and I'm a certified coach specializing in emotional resilience. If you don't know what emotional resilience is, you're not alone. A lot of people don't know what it is. I didn't until I started learning it. But essentially, it's being able to show up as who you are, as your authentic self in any situation, and it's learning to respond to different people and challenging situations in ways that honor ourselves and create win-win solutions for both people. They say that life gives you what you most need to learn. And when I first started this, I scored under the national average in the US for emotional resilience. But interestingly, I think it's that part, that piece, that understanding of the journey, the before as well as the after, that really helps me see through what my clients are struggling with to their ability to create emotional stability for themselves. In addition to being an emotional resilience coach, I'm also an expat single mom, and my background is in business development and public health. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I make weekly videos and that the videos are designed to kind of help you navigate a lot of the challenges that we face in life. So if this video or any of the other ones interests you, subscribe to the channel, then you can stay updated. In the video today, we're going to be talking about the power of self-love. Now, I would guess you've heard that expression that you can only love others as much as you love yourself. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means that you judge others just as harshly as you judge yourself. It means that you give others as little grace as you give yourself. It means that you speak to others the way that you speak to yourself. So take note. Do you hear contempt or do you hear curiosity in your tone? It means that you have as much difficulty forgiving others as you do forgiving yourself when you mess up. And it means that when you aren't perfect, and then you turn inward and you assassinate your character, well, when others err, when they make mistakes, well, you ascribe character faults to them too. So where you have incredibly high standards, those are the ones that are designed to improve you, right? Based on the very basic fundamental assumption that you need repairing, and the standards that are also so high that you're absolutely almost unable to meet them. And then where you judge yourself as not being good enough, you don't consciously or subconsciously truly believe in your own magnificence. Your starting point doesn't accept the fact that you're actually unbroken and you have singular assets that the world needs. And that in every moment, you are doing your best in the middle of major challenges that you're facing. When I ask clients if they're doing their best, all of them, every single one of them laugh and shake their heads. And I have a very diverse client array. And their answers are all absolutely homogenous. They look exactly the same. Hundreds of hours in, and I still have not met a single client who at their core believes in their own magnificence and can look me in the eye and proudly attest to that. So if you judge your own behavior harshly, then it makes sense that you would naturally be suspicious of other people, that you would take things personally, that you would expect the worst, and it makes sense that you would have trouble forgiving. Because you're assuming that they're going to act just like you, and you are not kind and generous to yourself. So it stands to reason that you can't assume that others are unbroken or doing their best given the obstacles that are in their lives if you don't apply it to yourself. If, deep in your core, you don't believe that anyone is doing their best, how does that affect how you approach the world? So let's take an example for a minute, right? Let's say you have two people and they're having a conversation about X. for this illustration, let's use Christmas dinner plans, right? It is the season. So one of the people comes out believing that they aren't eating together, and one of them after this discussion comes out thinking that they are eating together. So when this miscommunication, right, is discovered, if they believe basically that everyone is good and that they're all doing their best, they'll assume the best of each other. They won't take this situation personally. They'll be curious about how the miscommunication occurred. They're not going to look to assign fault, attribute blame. They're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. And then they're going to give each other space to express their feelings and find a solution that works for both of them. It's where they don't have a basic belief that everyone is trying their best. That's when they're going to immediately, begin to look where they might attribute fault and shift blame. Assuming the worst, of the other person immediately changes the tone of the conversation. It changes the safety of their interaction. Outrage instead of curiosity becomes the active player in the conversation. And the sense that, if you don't have your own back, nobody else is going to have it. Well, that gets confirmed. And then you walk around life from that perspective. So even if a solution is found, the miscommunication is going to end up feeling like a raw wound for at least one participant, if not both of them. Now, that was one example, but you could substitute almost anything for X, right? I used a missed Christmas dinner, but you could use any opinion, a political belief, a missed work deadline. And essentially the result would be the same. A safe space for engagement versus a battle zone with both sides aiming to kill. It really depends what perspective you're coming from. So this season, let's change our operating pattern and give ourselves and each other the gift of assuming that we are all doing our best. To do that, we have to start with ourselves. So the first thing, and I'll give you 3, is you can become aware of your self-judgment. Notice and then silence that inner critic. If you have trouble noticing judgment, start with language. Every sentence in your head that contains a should or a shouldn't, or a have to or a must or a can't, that sentence is judgmental. So explore it. You can also use tone to scout judgment. If in your head you can hear that tone of disgust or contempt or impatience, pause, listen for the judgment. What does the disgust in your head, what does that mean about you? And then challenge and reframe your inner critic's arguments. What evidence do you actually have that you are not good enough? What proof can you cite? Can you really point to that you aren't good enough? And beyond that, what proof have you been ignoring that you are good enough? Because most of us have negative confirmation bias where we look for things to confirm what we think that's negative, but not positive. So flip that. The second thing you can do is practice self-compassion. Whenever you think about your side of the argument, think about it from the point of view of your 10-year-old self. What is it that your 10-year-old self needs in the moment? Does the 10-year-old need to be heard, to be validated, to be hugged? Then give yourself those things. You can also think about it from the perspective of a good friend. Tell yourself what they would tell you. And when it comes to language, flip that script too. Substitute validating language for harsh language. Instead of being a disappointment, you are disappointed. You feel disappointment. Use the word feeling to express how you feel. And then normalize those feelings. Instead of not being enough, maybe you feel like you are not enough because you're trying to manage an oversized quantity of work. And then After you look at language and tone, go one step farther and take a peek at Dr. Kristin Neff's work. Her website is http://www.selfcompassion.org. And then the last and final suggestion that I have is sit with the feelings that come up. Don't invalidate them. You know, if you start with shoulds, I shouldn't feel this way, well then that just takes you right back around to step one, which is releasing judgment, noticing it. And invalidating your feelings, it doesn't work anyway because it doesn't make them go away. It just stuffs them in a very finite sized box that will absolutely overflow with enough invalidation. So replace repression with expression. Cry when you want to, whether you understand it or not. Feel frustrated, feel angry, feel resentful. Just sit with it and let it be. You'll be amazed at how just simple, non-judgmental acknowledgement can ease those feelings. And then when you feel acknowledged and validated, when you understand that you are good enough and your inner critic is silenced, then you begin at that moment to be able to sense your greatness. And it's from this perspective that you can then see it in other people too. So where you set growth standards, standards which assume that you are whole and you are complete, but you are seeking learning in all situations, and where you judge yourself as being good enough, then you consciously and subconsciously begin to truly believe in your own magnificence. Your starting point accepts that you are unbroken and you have singular assets that the world needs, and you are doing your very best amidst the challenges you are facing. And if you judge your own behavior generously, then it makes sense that you would naturally trust other people that they are doing their best. So you don't take things personally and you expect the best and you forgive easily because you assume that they're going to act just like you. And because you are kind and generous to yourself, you assume that they will be kind and generous as well. So it absolutely stands to reason that you will assume others are whole and doing their best given the obstacles in their lives if you apply it to yourself first. And think about it. If each of us engaged from this perspective, imagine how it would change the fabric of the world. Thank you so much for listening today. As with, my other articles and videos, I encourage you to start developing your emotional resilience. Start practicing this to be able to see that you and others are doing your very best given the circumstances. So tonight, start keeping a judgment journal. Write down the judgment that you passed during the day. Note how you speak to yourself. And then look at how you apply those judgments and that tone to other people. Or begin practicing self-compassion. Visit Dr. Neff's site and do one of her meditations. Visualize giving your 10-year-old self a hug. And then come back to the comments and let this community know if it worked for you. And if it didn't, why not? Let's look at that. So if you'd like to undertake, a full judgment detox, or you want to learn step-by-step how to practice self-compassion, contact me on my website, www.meganwarrencoaching.com, and click on the contact link to schedule a free discovery call with me. Be well.